Jinx wasn't the type to handle emotions gracefully. Rage? Sure. Chaos? Definitely. But jealousy? That was a whole other animal, and it didn't sit well with her. You didn't notice it at first. Jinx had always been a whirlwind of energy, running hot and cold depending on her mood. When she stopped dragging you into her schemes or didn't show up when you waited for her, you chalked it to her just being, well, Jinx. She was unpredictable by nature. But then the silence started stretching out. Days turned into weeks, and her absence felt like a gaping hole in your chest. Now that you think about it, the last time you saw her, you'd been talking to someone in the Undermarket City. A supplier who'd maybe had some useful parts for a project you'd been working on. The conversation was innocent, though, but Jinx had lingered in the background, her expression darkening by the second. When you turned to her, her lips curved into a sarcastic smile. "Don't let me interrupt your little date," she said before storming off without another word. You tried to reach her after that, but every time she either ignored you or was able to find an excuse to slip away. Her usual mania chatter over the radio, gone. The graffiti tags she'd leave her on your workshop, absent. Even her bombs, which she used to leave half finished on your desk just to make you laugh, were nowhere to be seen. Now, at first, you thought you'd done something wrong, but as you pieced the parts together, her reaction from that day, a realization crept in. Jealousy. Jinx, the girl who feared nothing, was jealous. You decided to give her space, knowing that pushing too hard would only make her retreat further. But the ache in her absence gnawed at you. And when another week passed, you couldn't take it anymore. You found her over one of her hideouts, hunched over a table covered in blueprints and scrapes of metal. The dim light cast long shadows across her face, highlighting the tight set on her jaw. "Jinx?" he said softly, stepping into the room. She didn't look up. "What do you need?" Her tone sounded bitter. You frowned. "Oh, I just wanted to see you. It's been a while." Her fingers tightened around the wrench in her hand. "Yeah, well, I've been busy. Got stuff to do, you know." "Oh, too busy to talk?" you asked, your voice breaking slightly. This made her glance at you with her blue eyes flashing suddenly between guilt and frustration. "Maybe. I don't want to talk to you," she muttered, turning back to her work. Why?" You stepped closer, determined to not let her push you away this time. "What did I even do?" She slammed the wrench on the table, the sound echoing through the room. "You didn't do anything," she snapped, finally looking at you. Her chest rose and fell with quick breaths, her emotions teetering on the edge. "It's me, alright? I'm the problem. I see you laughing with someone else, and She cuts herself off, biting her lip hard enough to draw blood. "And you what?" You pressed gently, heart pounded. "I get scared, okay?" she admitted reluctantly, her voice cracking. "Scared that you'll realize I'm not enough, that you'll leave me like everyone else did." Her vulnerability hit you like a punch to the gut. Slowly, you moved closer until you were standing right in front of her. "Jinx, you don't have to be scared. I'm not going anywhere." She sighed and searched her face, looking for a sign of a lie. When she didn't find one, her shoulders sagged, and the tension drained out of her. "You say that now," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I mean it," you insisted, reaching out to touch her hand, but she flinched at the first one. But she didn't pull away. "You're not just some crazy girl to me, Jinx. You're everything." Her eyes softened, the anchor in them slowly more fragile, vulnerable. Even just for a moment, it was like You weren't just looking at Jinx, the manic whirlwind of chaos, but the girl behind it all. The girl who was afraid to lose something that meant everything to her. Everything? She repeated, as if the word tasted foreign on her tongue, as if she couldn't believe it to be true. I'm not normal. I'm not what you need. She bit her lip again, looking away in sharp contrast to how she usually carried herself, bashful, loud, untouchable. But right now she was small and fragile, something entirely different than the bombshell she so often portrayed herself as. He sighed, taking a step closer, not wanting to crowd her, but knowing she needed some comfort. Something she rarely ever asked for. Normal's overrated, Jinx. It's the things that make us different that matter the most. The things that make us us. You tried. She gave you a soft, humorless laugh. The sound was sharp and bitter. It was a contrast to her mischievous giggles that she was known for. I make a lot of mistakes, I blow things up, hurt people, cause chaos, and I always mess things up when they start going good. Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the calm front she was trying to put up. You reached, brushing a lock of her messy purple hair behind her ear. We all make mistakes. You're not just some explosion waiting to happen. You've been there for me more times than I can even count. You've got this fire in you, Jinx. And yeah, maybe sometimes it gets a little messy, and that's what makes you stand out. That's what makes you unforgettable. For a long time, she just stood there, staring at the floor, her fingers twitching in a rare sight of nervousness. Slowly, she lifted her head. You could see the hint of a smile creeping onto her lips. It wasn't just the softest upturn at the corner of her mouth. It was a smile, and for Jinx, that was enough. I'm not going anywhere, You added softly, your voice soft and steady. I am here no matter what happens, no matter how crazy things get. Jinx looked at you, really looked at you. Her gaze looking between your eyes as if searching for something that had been missing, something that she had thought had slipped away. For the first time in a long time, her chaotic energy seemed to simmer down, replaced by something fragile and calm. Her hands reached out, a tentative gaze at first, but she was more sure as she gripped the warmth of your fingers against hers. It felt like the beginning of something, a bond that reforged in the heat of her jealousy and fear. I don't want to lose you, she whispered, the words barely audible, but they felt like a promise. You smiled, squeezing her hand. You won't. Days passed after that quiet, fragile moment between you and Jinx. Things definitely weren't fixed overnight. Nothing with Jinx ever was. But there was a shift, a subtle change in the way she looked at you. A quiet softness in her usual chaotic grin. She hadn't disappeared again, nor had she withdrawn into her solitary shell. Instead, she stayed close, often just out of reach, but always there. It was progress, and as anyone who knew Jinx could tell you, progress came in small, jagged pieces. One evening, you found yourself in your workshop, the low hum of the machinery surrounding you as you worked on a stupid project, but it wasn't just anything special, just fixing up some old tech, but your mind wasn't on the wires or the bolts or the nails in front of you. It was on her, on Jinx and the fragile trust you had built. Well, started to build. You had gotten used to her explosive outbursts and her wild laughter, her sharp words that could cut deeper than she probably intended to. But you also saw the quiet side of her now, the side she had kept hidden under layers and layers of defense, and you were determined to be there for her, even if she didn't always know how to ask. The door creaked open, pulling you out of your thoughts. You didn't look up immediately, knowing it was most likely Jinx. The rhythmic steps followed each other, one deliberate and heavy. Were unmistakable. She always had a way of making an entrance. Busy? She asked. Her voice sharp, but laced with something that was almost sounded like curiosity. You glanced up at her from your workbench, meeting her eyes as she stood in the doorway. Her arms crossed over her chest, her posture relaxed, but with that familiar guardedness. A slight scowl tugged at her lips, but it wasn't the usual angry one, more like one she wore when she was contemplating something that had been gnawing at her mind for a while. "Always," you replied, offering her a smirk, trying to lighten the mood. Jinx didn't return the grin. Instead, you ever think about leaving this place? She said. The question caught you off guard. You raised an eyebrow, pushing back on your bench, giving her your full attention now. Leaving? What do you mean? She started, her voice faltering in the briefest moment before she seemed to steady herself. Leaving the Undercity, leaving all this behind. Her gaze flickered around the room as the very thought of the idea escaped the walls that closed around her. It's all chaos, right? So it doesn't stop. No matter what you do, it just keeps spinning. You studied her carefully. There was a vulnerability there, hidden beneath the bravado. Jinx was never one to talk about an escape. Never one to admit she might be tired of the constant fight and the constant destruction she thrilled on it. So, you thought she did. "You want to leave?" you asked quietly, unsure if you were even reading her right. For a second she looked uncertain, as if she said more than she meant to. I don't know, she muttered, pacing around the room. It's just... She stopped, running a hand through her hair, frustrated. "Sometimes I feel like I'm stuck here, I'm not even a part of the world I'm living in because it's chaos. But it doesn't mean I don't belong here. Not really." You stood up, closing the distance between the two of you. She didn't pull away, but you could feel the tension in the air. You knew Jinx. She was never one to admit things weren't on her way. When she wasn't in control of the situation, and right now she clearly wasn't. "You do belong here," you said, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Maybe just not in the way you think, but you do. The chaos is a part of you, and it's what makes you who you are. It's not about leaving, it's about finding your place in it." I don't know, I can't fit in," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I try, but then I see you," and she trailed off, looking away as if she couldn't bring herself to finish the thought. You knew exactly what she was trying to say. You'd seen it in the way she pulled you away from you in the past, the way she tried to push you out when things got too close, too real, too raw. "You don't have to fit in," you said, your voice firm now. "You just have to be yourself, and if that means blowing things up, or causing chaos, or getting into fights, then that's okay. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not gonna leave you, Jinx." Her eyes filtered back to you, searching your face for any sign of insincerity. When she found none, she sighed and leaned back against the workbench, her shoulders sagging in defeat. "I'm not perfect, "No one is," you replied with a gentle smile, "but that doesn't mean you're not worth sticking around for." And silence hung between the two of you, not uncomfortable but heavy with unspoken emotions. Jinx was struggling. You could see that. And while she might not admit it outright, she was definitely starting to understand what it meant for it to have someone there. For her. Not just for her chaos, but for the real her. After what felt like an eternity, Jinx let out a soft laugh, shaking her head as though she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. "You really are something, you know that?" she said, her tone a little bit lighter than before, still layered with her usual sarcasm. "You're gonna be the death of me." "Maybe," he said with a shrug. "But at least I'll be by your side when it happens." She rolled her eyes. There was a smile taking at her lips, a small but real one. "Yeah, well, don't get used to it. Not going soft or anything." "Wouldn't dream of it," he said, playfully bumping her shoulder. "You're still one of the most unpredictable things I know." Jinx grinned, the familiar mischievous spark returning to her eyes. "Damn right I am. And you're not getting rid of me anytime soon." As she turned to leave the workshop, you watched her go, a sense of contentment settling over you.